Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Dyro here with another Options and Play video update. So today draws to a conclusion another busy week. We are uh, well past the halfway point of this quarter, and we've had just a bunch of really, really big critical names report. But that doesn't mean that there still aren't a lot of market-moving names still to come, right? And if you thought earnings season was over after Apple, think again because next week is still going to be very, very busy, and there are a ton of names that are expecting really big moves. So I'm going to go over, like I've done the past couple weeks, I'm going to go over the earnings that are going to be on the radar for the upcoming week. So we're going to jump right into it here with Monday morning and Ferrari, actually, RACE. Uh, it's really the only somewhat interesting name before the open. I mean, Monday mornings are typically a little bit slower for scheduled news. It's just how it goes. Um, Race maybe the only interesting one, and even then, really not like a very compelling idea, really one way or the other, in my opinion. Had a pretty big pop after May earnings, had a pretty big drop after August earnings, so it's basically back to where it was, prior to all of that, give or take. Um, really is not a whole lot of direction here. I mean, comparing this to like the auto stocks is it's almost like a crime. Comparing Ferrari to Ford, but it does fall into that category. The price in at 8 points. I mean, it had a greater than 10 point move last quarter, but there's just no direction, and just something I'd probably rather be on the sidelines and the spectator for versus actually putting money to work in this one. Just don't have like a real great read on it. Uh, if it shows some good action after, we can always jump in. But to lay out money, it just doesn't seem worth it to me. Monday after the bell, booking, aka the artist formerly known as Priceline, Mylan, Nevro, and Occidental OXY, big energy name. So of those four names, Booking will almost certainly be the largest mover, and if it's not, it would be a pretty major upset because they're looking for 130 points. That's what the straddle is saying for next week. So Booking is coming off a miss, and it's hanging below its 200A, and it's also, I mean, you go back a bit further, it's also closer to kind of like the bottom of like a uh, like support of like the last couple of years. So it doesn't look great overall. Expedia was pretty good though. So those two are pretty closely correlated in the business sense. I mean, the stocks can differ a little bit, but like, what's good for Expedia tends to be good for Booking also. Um, so in terms of earnings, I mean there could be some upside surprise. I mean, obviously Expedia was good, Booking coming off a miss, so maybe there's a little upside surprise trading near year support down here. Chart's a little sloppy. The only issue you have with Booking is that they're kind of known for sandbagging guidance, and in this market that really has not been looked at too kindly. So uh, you know kind of a sloppy setup. Could be a little upside surprise, but with the history of sandbagging guidance, it's kind of like a toss up to me. Mylan and Oxy, a couple larger names, but of the ones I mentioned, Nevro actually seems the most interesting. And why I say that is because had a really sharp move lower here, smashed, rolled over, and then this day was due to a patent ruling and had this monster. This is a real bar. It had a monster blow off move down into like the 30s, and then like a really quick snap back to 60. And why it's interesting is because it really hasn't been able to rebound much. I mean, it did bounce up into the mid 60s, but then it's been slowly walking lower here, and it's currently below. So it's currently below all moving average support, right? It's below any real area of support on the chart, and it has like the next clear level of interest is like the retest of this blow off low. And um, last quarter they had mixed guidance, so cut guidance. So it's coming off like a relatively weak print. The chart looks weak, and the nearest point of interest on the downside is down in like the 30s. So I was thinking like a speculative bearish position could be worthwhile in this one. Tuesday morning, CVS, Lilly, Mallinckrodt, and then Regen. So this is definitely going to be a pharma bio heavy morning. Also, Ralph Lauren for in the retail land could be an interesting one. Um, Lilly and MNK, not exactly the same setup at the moment, but they both had pretty big moves after. It's like Lilly had a pretty big move after last quarter. MNK had a pretty big move after last quarter. This one's pulled back a lot further than Lilly um, than Lilly has, but uh, you know, Pharma's been mixed. I mean, it had a great move. Kind of hanging underneath some resistance now, like hanging below the 50s. The MNK is hanging below the 100-day. So the setups aren't spectacular. They are coming off great quarters, but the setups are a little bit less interesting at the moment. Um, CVS though could be a name to focus on, and why I say that is it's priced in at about 4 points CVS, but it's as you can see it's kind of sandwiched between key levels. So you have 80, which was just the recent high on the upside, and then 70, which is a 200-day on the downside. So not perfectly right in between, but in between like 70 and 80. So uh, I like when stocks are kind of like in between like key levels going into earnings, especially so in this case, um, CVS had a really quick drop, and Pier Walgreens has still been on a really nice run since it reported, and those two tend to trade together. So, um, with CVS about 8 points off its high, and had just bounced off the 200-day. It seems like this could be kind of like an interesting speculative long candidate, and basically to see if it has like a decent number to see if it kind of closes the gap, gets back up to 80, and maybe plays some catch up with Walgreens, which had just broke out into its best levels from 2018. So kind of like a sympathy catch up idea there. Uh, Price it in 4 points, but I mean, if it can get up through the 77, there's a really obvious gap up to 79, 80 area. So I kind of like that idea there. Ralph Lauren, like retail names will start to pick up over the next few weeks. Ralph Lauren, one of like the first apparel names to go. So Under Armour was this week. You have Ralph Lauren coming up next week. Uh, this one's held on to gains. I mean, pretty nicely, right? I mean, going back from the beginning of end of May. I mean, um, it did dip here, but it's back above most moving averages. It's kind of kind of into like the consolidation area again. So overall, like on a monthly chart, a pretty nice weekly, daily range. Uh, this name's often volatile when it reports, and they're looking at like a greater than a 10-point price to move for the options. Um, but if you get like another good quarter, so it's had two really nice quarters back to back, really solid prints. So if you get like a third in a row, I mean, even though the options are a little bit more than $10, I mean, you could see like maybe like a 15-ish point, 15, 16, right? So it gets to 140, and then it has if it can clear that, then you're probably looking at a retest of the last quarter's high up to like above 145. Kind of like lines up with a double top, 145, 146 area. So at 133, it's priced in 10, but maybe there's visibility for 12 to 15-ish point move. Kind of interesting one there. After the close Tuesday, Dexcom, Etsy, Twilio, Tableau, Zillow. So some volatile, smaller cap names. Dexcom is current position, and the upside still seems the most interesting here. Um, Absolutely crushed the last 2 quarters. Just crushed estimates. Monster move here, then an even bigger move last quarter. It's hanging in. It bounced perfectly off the 100-day, dancing around the 50-day, so still showing some relative strength. Options are pricing in, so the options aren't weekly; they're the monthly expiration options. So there's an extra week on top, but they're looking at like about 18 points for those November 16 straddles. But it did move 30 last quarter. This was the earnings last quarter, about 30. If the numbers are strong again, seems to be a pretty clear line to retest the 52-week high around 150. So kind of like the look of that on the bull side. Twilio and Tableau, to me, probably avoids, just because software names are slightly out of favor at the moment. I mean, both have had really great stretches recently, so I feel like the numbers will probably be solid, but options aren't cheap, and these types of names haven't really been getting rewarded over like the last like few weeks, so probably avoid for me. Etsy, um, this one's not a bad setup here, right? So it's been relatively range bound since June. Pretty well defined support underneath at 40. Recent top around 50 to 51. Could be like a good volatility candidate, right? So options were saying 6 points, but if it gets below 40, I mean, there's a really clear gap down to the low 30s, right? Really well defined. And from 43 where it's currently at, I mean it's greater than 6 points just to retest a high above 50. I mean if it retests 52, I mean right there that's about 9. So it's priced in 6, but you know could make the argument you could see like 8 to 10 ish. If it retests the high or closes the gap. Zillow could be a speculative short, coming off a really ugly quarter. Real estate stocks, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about real estate. Anything related to real estate right now has just been struggling big time. Zillow hanging near its worst level of the year, right at critical support at 40. Um, so another dud, and if this breaks 40 with volume, I mean there could be room down to like the low 30s. The next real major level is like 32, 33 area, right? Um, Weekly straddle is priced in about 5.5 points. Like I said, could be a decent speculative bearish position there. Wednesday morning, Cody and Coors, so a couple retail names. Cody, it's been a name we've traded in the past, right? Hovering around its 52-week low, coming off a disappointing quarter, but Estee Lauder EL just turned in a pretty nice report. So had a pretty nice jump. You can zoom in here. You can see Estee Lauder had a pretty nice week. Cody makeup brand. You know, this might fall in the wait and see category because occasionally there's some large option positioning right ahead of earnings, and that's tended to be a good signal in the past. So I think what I'll do is wait and see if there's any of that mega monster option positioning coming in, and then if so, maybe ride that wave. Core's interesting too. So really nice quarter back in August, and it broke out of really had been like tough resistance at 70. Then when they announced the deal with Louis Vuitton, just sank right back down to 200A. It started to hold it well, but then once it lost to 200A, it's just like a waterfall. So at the moment, you can see Coors is dancing around yearly support, which puts it in kind of a tough position, right? So, coming off like a great quarter, but the stock is acting poor. Not a good, not a good like combination. I will say, it like the bull side does look better, right? Because it's had a really nice number last quarter. TPR Tapestry, which is Coach Kate Spade, just had a decent number this past week. But You have to acknowledge that a major break below 55, 56, and I mean, there could be some serious downside here. Uh, so it could be a decent straddle strangle candidate. Options are pricing about 6 points, but to get back to 200 days about eight, or I mean underneath 52, 53. I mean you got like a big gap down to 48. So this could be a good volatility bet candidate. After the close Wednesday, some smaller like under the radar tech software names like AOI, CYBR, which we've traded in the past. Cargo, actually, AOI, CYBR, Cargo are names we traded in the past. Also, after the close Wednesday, some bigger, more followed names like IC, TripAdvisor, Square, Roku, Qualcomm, uh, Take Two. Sensing a pattern here, right? Tech. It's gonna be a tech-heavy night. Very, very, very concentrated with tech names. Uh, The thing with this is though that sentiment's going to play big time into these setups on a lot of these, just because tech has seen like caught like a brunt of the selling of this recent like market weakness, and um, what I've noticed over the last couple of weeks that a lot of top performers in tech have kind of been struggling to get rewarded on earnings this quarter. So, if the market's under pressure next week, then you may want to be backing off some of like the bull setups in some of these stocks that are like close to 52-week highs, that are up a lot this year, right? Seems like people are using earnings as an opportunity to take profits. Uh, Square, uh, just to kind of jump into some of these names, though. Square, this one, it's been like a great name after earnings, so it hasn't really rewarded people laying out money on the actual report, because like the reaction to the report has been kind of lackluster the last couple quarters, and so this quarter looking at 8.5 points, which is a little high considering what it's moved in the past. So I think maybe sticking to the playbook, like wait till they report, and then I mean, last quarter gave like I mean this was the day reported, right, and then it went from 70 to over, basically 100 in the next like month and a half. Um, going back going back to May, it had like a little bit of like a washout, and then it had like just a monster run. So it has like a history of not great reactions to earnings, but then it tends to see like really incredible follow through. So probably stick to the playbook. Maybe wait out earnings and then hop in right after. IEC's hung on to gains pretty well, but this is a big momentum tech name near its high, pricing in quite a bit, about 20 points. So kind of falls in the camp of it kind of depends on what sentiment's like going into this. Roku, a little bit different than those two other names. Coming off a solid quarter, so this was last quarter, and then went on like a really nice run too. Uh, it's working on a reversal setup here. I mean, it almost closed the gap, just about back above the 100-day now. Weekly straddle is a little bit pricey, so looking about 9 points on the for Roku. But this could have a pretty volatile swing. I mean, it's been known to have volatile swings in the past. Um, I'd say last quarter's bullish numbers. So here, last quarter's bullish numbers and strong price reaction, price action after seem to favor the long side. But I mean, this name has really been punished bad sometimes on misses. So um, right now, like the current position is a longer dated January call spread. So probably gonna have to adjust that lower because it's a little bit too far out of the money to capitalize, I think at the time. So probably gonna have to adjust that lower, but also I feel like maybe like a short-term put hedge could be a smart idea just in case there's a quick drop lower if they slip up. It's the type of name that's been punished in the past. So maybe like a short-term put hedge against like a longer dated call position. Just like I like to stagger the expiration because if the report's solid, and this starts like building momentum back higher, there's some room here. It's about 20 points off its high, so it could build momentum. All right, Thursday morning, Goose, Crocs, and Dillards. So pretty retail heavy. Although I will say that Dillard's hasn't confirmed, um, but if they do, this is going to be the first brick and mortar retailer, and this could create some great sympathy trades. So like like a Macy's or Kohl's or Nordstrom. These brick and mortar names kind of trade together. So I'll wait and see if Dillard's confirms, and then we'll go from there. Goose, this is a pretty nice setup actually. So we traded Goose a couple times this year, but you can see relatively range bound, more or less stuck underneath 60. It's had buyers down in like the 50 range. Um, you know, the thing with Goose is that it doesn't have a ton of direction at the moment, but this is more like an option oriented trade. So what I mean by that is that options are priced in about 4 to 4.5, and that to me seems kind of light. Uh, Going back to last quarter here, right? Top to bottom moved about 6 points that session, and then obviously the June quarter was even greater. I mean, that was closer to 15. So even though last quarter was kind of like a kind of a more choppy print, it still moved 6, and the quarter before that it moved 15. Yet this week, so this upcoming week, the only price in at 4 and 4.5. So that seems pretty light. Uh, like the levels aren't perfect, but options seem cheap. So maybe like a straddle strangle, something like that. Something to capitalize on a bigger than anticipated move for Goose. So that's like the initial thought right there with Goose. After the close Thursday, more volatile tech names. So you have Yelp, Trade Desk, Skyworks, and Redfin. Um, so with Redfin, I'll probably wait and see how Zillow goes. Depending on how that number looks, and then maybe try a trade on Redfin because the setups are kind of similar, and just another name that falls into that real estate like group, and likely to see some pressure there. But we'll wait and see how Zillow goes. Trade Desk, this thing probably still a little overheated, even after it's pulled back, over 20% of its high. I mean, yes, it's 20% of its high, but it's still up, what, 150% since May. Um, Probably needs more digestion. To me, it seems like one of these candidates where could be like another good report could be kind of sold into people like lighting up, taking some profits. I mean, it's up so much year to date, kind of falls into that category. Yelp, um, Yelp expanding volatility last quarter, which made it interesting. If it didn't have such a big move last quarter, don't know I would be interested in it, but I mean it had like greater than like a 10-point run for a $40 stock at the time. That's huge. Um, it's back down closer to
57
40,
minutes to the close.
and at this point, I feel like logic says higher because last quarter was so strong. But because August was such a big move, it means options kind of got juiced. So implied volatility is like over 120% for options next week, which is like about 6 points. And what I was thinking is that maybe like a call fly here because it seems that you could be bullish after last quarter, but 50s like high 40s to 50 have marked the top on this like so many times this year that especially with the overall tech acting a little bit weaker and well off its highs, maybe you're looking for more modest upside. So plus like the call fly is a good way to take advantage of more expensive options, right? You can kind of manage your risk a little bit better. So that's what I was thinking. A call fly maybe for like Yelp with like the top around like 50 or maybe 52.50. Um, all right, Friday morning pretty quiet, but kind of interesting development after the close on Friday is Athena. And why this is interesting is, well, first of all, most companies don't report Friday after the close, but Athena has been rumored to be on the block, right? Like this has been in the news for months now, and Athena was supposed to report yesterday, so Thursday, but they unexpectedly delayed the results to next Friday, so it's coming Friday. So people are buzzing that this means that a deal's in the works, and a lot of these reports have said, well, there's been a ton of reports, a lot of mixed. I mean, some have said 130s. Some have said 140s. The initial offer way back when, way back when was 160.
Turkish
So who really
Erdogan
knows
says
what to expect
Khashoggi
here?
kill order came
What I will
from
say is
highest
that the
levels of
November
Saudi government.
140 strike calls have some action Friday, so some people are speculating that there's a higher bid coming. Maybe like a speculative call position, right? I mean, like you have well-defined risk. If a deal gets done and it's above 140, maybe you get paid. I mean, the options are reasonable, like up to 140. Probably wouldn't go too much above that, just really because there hasn't been many indications that the bid's going to come in materially above that. But maybe like a speculative call position on that one. All right, I know it's a lot, but it's a lot of names, but it's a lot to look forward to, right? That's how I look at it. A ton going on, so it means a ton of potential, and that always gets me excited. So rest up, get enjoy the weekend, get some sleep because it's going to be another busy week, um, and plenty more earnings ideas coming down the pipe. So have a fantastic weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Monday.